I'm Allan, IT operations leader, focused on observability and people leadership under pressure. This is Metrics Mayhem podcast. Let's get into this week. So it's been 2 months, no drops, no newsletter, and I've posted nothing on this channel. Why is that? So before I get into the why, I think it's important that I address the elephant in the room. It's, as you know, I was working in Abu Dhabi in the UAE. The decision I made was to not renew my contract and to come back to good old fashioned wet blighty, and I left. A week later, the Iran war with the US started. So if we're putting those facts in that order, and people are concluding that I left because I saw it coming, I obviously didn't. Nobody I spoke to saw it coming the way it came. The decision I'd made had nothing to do with the security situation. It was a decision that was already made. It was already in motion. It was already done. And before any of that obviously began. Let me be very clear. I was very, very lucky with no decoration on it, right? You know, the people that I work with, most of them are still there and they're still living there. There were people that were injured, especially in Abu Dhabi. Fortunately, not that many as there was in Dubai. There were a lot of migrant workers that obviously left and had trouble with leaving. And the situation there, employment wise, is still quite tough. People struggling with their jobs, struggling with their finances. If anyone says it's recovered over that way because people think that Dubai is the place to go, and in all honesty, you need to get your eyes tested, look at the facts. I can tell you now that it's not back to normal. Probably for some of the higher earners, maybe so, but a lot of the normal people, the day-to-day people that keep the country running, the UAE running, they're still really struggling. So I want to put that to one side. And I want to tell you today just why I actually left, kind of bring you up to speed of where I've been and what I'm doing. And come back to this channel, obviously, today with kind of a different kind of episode. And I want to get into why I didn't renew my contract. Right? Didn't enjoy, right? I just couldn't carry on. If you've ever sat in a senior role and in a working professional culture that doesn't quite share your assumptions about how that role is supposed to work, you know exactly what I meant by that. If you haven't, then let me educate. Here's the shape of it, right? Yes, I'm in production. Yes, we're in observability. Yes, we get calls in all hours that maybe some of them wasn't in the contract you originally signed, but that happens, right? I was getting calls to do work in the night for material that wouldn't even be looked at the following day, but it was demanded. A dynamic where the difference was the deliverable and not the work itself. Seniority that flowed in one direction and availability that flowed in another. The quiet, persistent demand that I perform a vision of a role that really didn't match the version that I was hired to do, right? None of this shows up on a dashboard. It shows up in your sleep. It shows up in your health. It shows up in your patience and your persistence of the version of yourself that you used to look in the mirror and recognize. In the middle of all that, I was being asked slowly and consistently to be a different version of myself. Not any single moment, not anything I could point to on a Friday and say, that's the thing. It was increments. I was calling something fine when it wasn't. Trading clarity really for compliance in the small daily ways that don't register until you catch the reflection and you don't recognize the person you've become or the leader you've become. Each one on its own is easily survivable. We do it day to day, no matter where the professional culture is, right? Every organization is different, no matter where you are in the world. I want to stress that. But stack them all together, and I could quite easily see that I was not the practitioner I started as and not one that I really wanted to become. this trade, not hours for money, not effort for reward, you for them. And I wasn't willing to make it. Some things you sell, time, skill, availability inside the contract, energy, fair price, fair exchange, it's all written down. Some things you don't sell, ever. Not for a renewal, not for a bonus, not for tax-free money, because the moment you do, you've got nothing left worth bringing into the next room. Think about that for a second. What are you trading for that money? What are you trading for that tax-free cash? The thing I won't sell is what I see and what I'm willing to say about it. The whole practice, the show, the book, the work is built on one premise. Look at what's actually there. Be honest about it. If I'll trade that for a contract when no one can't be open and honest, then the practice is just theatre, right? As a practitioner, I'm just being an actor. I've got no business telling anybody else about building operational cultures honestly, because I'm not living and breathing one myself. People say, "Oh, you're just falling on your sword. Take the money." But I'm not 30 anymore, right? So I made the call. Then the world was made much larger a week later, and the two are not connected. I wanted to be careful never to let one stand in front of the other. So, as in all my signals that you've listened to, I always hard stops are back, and this is what I want you to take from this, right? Is Allan's hard stop for this episode is some things are not for sale. The day you learn which ones are yours is the day you become useful to yourself. Just think about that. Now, because this is a signal drop and not a memoir, here's the operational version of what I've just gone through, right? Because like I said, this is all about observability and operations. I don't want to leave you with that thought. But the whole dynamic that I've just spoken about runs through every IT ops career I've ever watched up close. And it's in every culture, as I said previously. Nobody asks you to compromise in a single conversation. They ask you in increments. The sign off on a dashboard that's not quite telling the truth because the exec wants a green box all the time. Softening of an incident post review because the owning team, they're a bit sensitive. Call for workaround solution on the roadmap, just not to take another red. Quote a recovery time that you really don't believe because the customer needs reassurance. Bless the tool you all know is going wrong because saying no would burn a relationship. Each one is small. Each one is survivable. None of them would make a single headline. But each one is a withdrawal from an account most people don't even know they're keeping. It's the account of what your name means in the room. The room that you're in, your brand, your personal experience. Here's the move this week for you, right? Right down the line. Yours, not mine. One, you won't cross. Even if it's the cost of a renewal. The bonus, the easy quarter, be specific. I won't sign off on a dashboard I know it's misleading. I won't quote a number I don't believe. I won't recommend a vendor I don't trust just to keep the peace. Then watch your week for the small asks that brush up against that. The ones disguised as being a team player. The small ones are the ones that move your line. I'm back. The show is back in cadence. The book is weeks away. There's a lot coming. And for everyone still in the region, much love, passionate for you all. And I know I'm talking most of you all the time, but please stay safe. It's great to be back. Thank you ever so much for support you've given me, the podcast, the reach out, the people that read the newsletter. Much love to you all. Thank you ever so much. And as I always say, more signals soon. Let's have your comments. If you find it useful, you know the drill.